Good evening and welcome to the Green Man Storytellers. Our theme for this evening is mind and brain, so our stories will be about intelligence in different forms with riddles, puzzles, tests. And now sit back and enjoy.
This is a tale that comes from India and reminds you to be mindful when making your acquaintances. One day, a farmer went with his oxen to plow his field. He had just dug the first furrow when a tiger walked up to him. "Peace be with you, my friend, and how fare you on this fine morning?" Quaking with fear, the farmer thought it best to be polite. "Peace to you too, my friend. I am quite well this morning." "I am glad to hear that. For you see, Providence has sent me to eat your 2 oxen. If you will go untie them as the God-fearing man you are." "Oh, my friend, you must be mistaken. Providence sent me to plow my field. I cannot plow my field without the oxen. Hadn't you better go back and make further inquiries?" "I have no need to delay this further. Please untie your oxen and I will be with you in a moment." And with that, the tiger set about sharpening his claws and teeth in a very significant manner. "Oh, my friend, I beg of you, please spare my oxen." "Oh, I know, there is a fine young milk cow tied up in the yard back at home. Would you accept her in exchange for the oxen?" "Oh, that would be acceptable," said the tiger. And taking his 2 oxen, the farmer started his sad trek back home. Back at the house, the farmer's wife was busy doing her chores, and she saw the farmer coming home from a far distance. She called out, "What, lazy bones, back already? I've just begun my chores." The farmer explained the sad tale of encountering the tiger and how he had exchanged the fine young milk cow in exchange for his oxen. "Oh, a likely story! You saved your stupid oxen at the expense of my beautiful cow? If you had an ounce of sense in your brain, you would have thought of a different way to get us out of this scrape." "Well, think for yourself, wife. Without the cow, how are the children going to have milk? And how am I to make collops and porridge without butter?" "Porridge and collops are very fine and well, but how are we to have bread without wheat? And I can't have wheat without oxen to plow the field. Now make haste and go untie the cow." "You great Gabby! You should think of something else to save us." The farmer couldn't think of anything. "Think for yourself, woman." "Very well. But if I must do all the thinking, then you must obey my orders, for I can't do both. Go back to the tiger and tell him that the cow would not come with you, but your wife will bring it back shortly." Now, the farmer was a coward, and he didn't like the idea of going back to the tiger empty-handed, but he didn't have another solution, so he did as he was told. He got to the field, and the tiger was still there, sharpening his claws and fangs. And when he found out he had to wait even longer for his dinner, he began to prowl around, lashing his tail, curling his whiskers in a terrifying manner, making the farmer's knees knock together in fright. Back at the house, the farmer's wife went to the stables and saddled up the pony. Then she dressed in her husband's best garments and tied his turban high above her head to make herself look as tall as possible. She bestrode the pony and set out towards the field, swaggering jauntily down the road as she rode, until she came to the fort. And she cried out, as bold as brass, "Peace to the gods, that I may find a tiger in this place, for I haven't tasted tiger's meat since yesterday when I ate 3 for breakfast." Hearing these words, the tiger grew wild with fright, and he turned around and bolted, almost knocking over his jackal. You see, all tigers have a sidekick jackal that goes with them, who waits at them at their table, and as a reward, gets to eat all the bones that are left over. "Oh, my lord, whither away so fast?" cried the jackal. "Run, run, there is a very devil of a horseman in the field who thinks nothing of eating 3 tigers for breakfast." "My lord, the sun has dazzled your eyes. That was no horseman, it was just the farmer's wife, dressed as a man." The tiger paused. "Are you quite sure?" "Quite sure, my lord. If your lordship's eyes hadn't been dazzled by the sun, you would have seen her ponytail behind her." "You must be mistaken, for that was the very devil of a horseman that I saw." "Who's afraid, my lord?" said the jackal bravely. "Come on, you're not going to give up your dinner because of a woman." Now, like all cowardly creatures, the tiger was suspicious. "You may be bribed to betray me." "We can go together." "Nay, you may take me there and then run away." "Let us tie our tails together, and then I cannot run away." The tiger finally agreed, and he tied their tails together tightly in a reef knot. The pair set out arm in arm back towards the field. In the field, the farmer and his wife were laughing at the trick the wife had played on the tiger when they looked up and saw the pair marching back to them as bravely as ever with their tails tied together. "Oh, run, run, we are lost, cried the farmer. "You great Gabby, stop making so much noise and be quiet. I can't hear myself think." The wife waited until the pair had come within hailing distance, and then she cried out ever so sweetly, "Oh, my dear jackal, thank you for bringing me such a fine, fat tiger. If you will wait just a moment, I will be done, and you may have his bones." The tiger heard these words, and he took off as fast as he can back towards the forest, running at full speed, dragging the jackal behind him, for he forgot their tails were still tied together. Bumpity bump, "My lord, stop, stop," cried the jackal. But the noise only scared the tiger more, making him run faster and faster over hill and dale, through the bushes and brushes, until the tiger collapsed from exhaustion. And the poor jackal was covered head to tail in bumps and bruises. The moral of this story: don't tie your tail to a coward. And that was the close alliance, also known as a tale of woe.
There once was a prince, as wealthy as could be, more money than you can imagine, and he took it upon himself to build a palace. He built it right across the town square from the king's castle. This palace was magnificent in workmanship and bejeweled, and there was nothing you could possibly add to this. When the king came out one day and saw this, he immediately sent for this prince, because yet this prince had not had an audience with the king, but he'd still built this palace. When the prince shows up to meet with the king, he says, "Congratulations, that's quite a palace you've got there. Makes my castle kind of look like a mud hut." And and congratulations again. But I've got to ask you, was it your idea to put the sign across the door that said, "Money can do everything"? Well, the prince admitted, "Yes, I did put that there, Majesty, but if it bothers you, I'll have the lettering removed." "Oh, no, I wouldn't think about doing that, but I'm curious, with all the money, could you possibly have me assassinated?" Well, now the prince is concerned. Has he gone a step too far in what he's done? Well, Majesty, I'm sorry, if it pleases you, I'll remove the sign. I will level the palace. Oh, no, I would not think of you doing that. But since what I wanted you to do was admit that you had put that sign there, and if that's the case, I need you to prove that money can do everything. I will give you 3 days to speak with my daughter. If you do in fact speak with her, oh well, all good. You shall marry her. If you don't get to speak to her in a 3-day period, I will have you beheaded. Do you understand? Well, the prince indeed did understand. Now he's sick with worry. He can't eat, he can't sleep. Day in, he's thinking, how can he save his neck and his head that's attached to it? Well, the second day, he's even worse. Limp as a rag, laying in bed. He takes paper and pen in hand, and he's starting to write out his last will, because the king's daughter is locked in the castle. She's surrounded by guards. There's nothing he can do. In walks in, or I should say, in hobbles in, an old woman. This old woman was his nurse when he was very, very young, and still works for him. She looks and is very concerned about his haggard condition, laying in bed. What is wrong with you? What's happening? Well, he doesn't want to say. She inquires again, and he hems and haws. Finally, he tells her the whole story. She says, that's what you're worried about? You make me laugh. You're giving up just like that? I'm going into town and see what I can do about this. And the old woman hobbles away. She's going into town to the village silversmith. She meets with him. I want you to build me a goose out of silver. I want this goose, I want the bill to be able to open and close. I want it big enough and hollow that a man can be put inside. And most of all, I want this goose tomorrow. Tomorrow? So there's no way I can't. No, tomorrow is what I said. Then she pulled out her purse and showed him. It is filled with gold coins. She says, this is just the down payment. How about tomorrow? Well, the silversmith is taken aback by the amount of money. He looks, he sputters and says, well, that definitely changes everything. I'll have the goose tomorrow. The next day, she goes to pick up the goose, and it is magnificent. It's a beauty. She puts it onto her cart and takes it back to the prince's castle. She says, you get into this goose and bring your violin. He was an accomplished violinist. He's in the goose, they're on the cart. She says, when we get into town, you start playing your violin. So off she goes, pulling this hollow goose on her cart. When they reach town, the people are lining the streets to see this magnificent statue and listen to this beautiful music. Everybody's coming out of their homes. Well, word reaches the king's daughter. Oh, father, I want to go see this goose. I want to see this magnificent sight. No, you're not going into town until after the 3rd day. Not if your prince is on the loose out there. Oh, but father, I can't go the next day. The word is the goose will be gone by then. I want to go, please. Well, as fathers have a soft spot for their daughter, he thinks, well, I can't let you go into town, but what I can do, I'll order the goose brought inside, which he does. The old woman pulls a cart into the prince's bedroom, into the daughter's bedroom, and leaves it there. As she's leaving, laughing, thinking that is exactly what she wanted to do. The princess is listening to the beautiful music, and the goose opens up. The prince steps out, and she's frightened, but he says, Please wait. I am the prince that must talk to you, or your father is going to have me executed. You must speak to me to save my life." Well, not only do they speak, they have a long conversation. Hours go by. Evening is coming. Back into the goose he goes and is carted away. Now the third day is rolled around for the prince, and the king sends for him. It's execution day. The prince is in front of the king. "So, you with all your money, were you able to use that to speak with my daughter?" "Yes, Majesty." "What?" "Yes, Majesty, I spoke with her." "When? Where? How, what?" He's just asked her. He sends for his daughter. She comes in. "Yes, Father, I did speak. We spoke for quite a while." She explained how he was the one who allowed him to come into her room in the hollow goose. King nodded. He took off his crown and placed it onto the prince's head and said, "There. This not only indicates that you have all the money, it tells me you've got the intelligence to know how to use it as well. I want you to go off and be happy, for I am giving you my daughter in marriage." And like all fairy tales, it ended happily ever after.
I'm going to tell you two stories that are riddles. The first one is also from the animal kingdom, and it is called A New Prince. King Leopold the leopard was the king of the entire animal kingdom. He needed to choose an heir because he had no sons. He decided to hold a contest and announced to all of his followers, "You will all have an opportunity to become the next monarch. It will be decided by this spear. You will throw the spear in the air and start to dance. You must catch the spear and by the count of 10 while dancing. The first animal to count to 10 while dancing and catching the spear will become the new king." Everyone was so excited. The elephant went to the front of the line and said, "I will be first." And he proceeded to dance a lumbering kind of dance and threw the spear in the air, but counted only to 4 until he caught it. Next was the graceful ostrich, who danced a graceful dance, picking the spear up and launching it gracefully into the air, and it only clattered to the ground while she was counting to 5. She was so ashamed, she buried her head in the sand. Well, all the rest wanted a turn. The ape was next, and he danced very gracefully and very nicely, but he forgot to start counting, so he lost. The snake slithered, but couldn't do anything with the spear, and the ants even did a flash mob, but even all the ants working together couldn't lift the spear. Finally, the little deer said, "I want to go. I want to try." And the animals laughed and laughed. "Oh, how can the little deer win the contest when none of the rest of us were able to?" But the deer said, "No, I want to try." And the king agreed, "Yes, everyone must have a chance." So the deer took the spear, launched it into the air, and very easily counted to 10, catching it at the perfect moment. The deer was made king the very next day. How in the world did the little deer accomplish such an amazing feat? Well, he counted to 10 by 5s. 5, 10. And that is how he became the new prince. Thank you. My next story is called A Handful of Mustard Seed. A young woman was overjoyed when she gave birth to a young baby boy. Her family was complete. Her husband and she were so excited to learn about how to become good parents and had such a wonderful time. They, unfortunately, before the baby was a year old, the baby became ill and passed away. The mother was distraught. How can this be? I must find a way to bring my baby back to life and make my family whole again. She asked neighbors, she asked family, she asked villagers for something to bring her family back, to bring her baby back. Finally, an old wise man said, "Go to Buddha, he will have a solution." So the woman rushed to Buddha and said, "Buddha, I need a medicine to bring my baby back to life." Buddha said, "Yes, I can provide such a medicine. However, you must bring me one ingredient. The missing ingredient is a handful of mustard seed, but it must be from a family where no child, parent, or spouse has passed away." "I will find it right this instant," she said, and ran off. She went to all houses nearby and far, looking for the special ingredient. She went to shacks and tent campsites and mansions and multifamily dwellings. She talked to children, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, but she found that the task was impossible. How was she supposed to find a household where no one had passed away? She went home, unable to fulfill Buddha's task, but she came home with a medicine that was able to help her move on. What was the medicine? As she was talking to all of the families, she was hearing their stories of how they had lost loved ones and found ways to come together, remember their loved one, and move on with their life. Gather with their community, cherish each other, and move on while remembering. She took those lessons to heart and knew that Buddha had given her the only medicine he possibly could. Thank you.
Listen, gather while I tell you the story of a Viking prince who later on became a Christian. Also, if you look at the model of this Viking dragon proud longship, you will notice that the mast is about 7/8 the length of the boat. These ideas are important to the telling of my tale. And now to begin my story. If it is true that all vicious villains were stupid, it would not matter whether kings were wise or not. But some of the wickedest people are dangerously clever, and none more so than the tricky trolls. Now, King Olaf Tryggvason of Iceland, the year of our Lord, 999, was not only an old but still strong and mighty ruler, he was also a staunch scholar, for he, as a prince, he'd been educated in a monastery in Russia. There, the Christian monks taught him how to read, how to write, and how to do tricky math problems. Oh, how he loved to do tricky math problems. And now, sailing in the December mists with his crew, he realized they were brave, strong, fierce, and loyal. But none was more noble than Torgir the Bold. Young, strong Torgir the Bold, the ship's lookout and navigator, who held King Olaf in awe and admiration because King Olaf was a thinking man. Sailing through the December mists, King Olaf said, "Sail close to the shore so that we keep land in sight and do not get lost in this evil, patchy fog." As they sailed closer to the land, they saw the gannet birds floating in the updrafts. They saw the seals sleeping in the coves, and they saw a crenellated crustacean of craggy cliff sticking out. And there, perched precariously on a precipice about halfway up, stood an old man. "Hello," called King Olaf. "Are you stranded? Do you need help?" "Nay," snickered the old man. "All hail, wise King Olaf Tryggvason. All hail." Now, something in that last word made Torgir miss an oar stroke. "Who are you? Where do you live?" "Why, I live here on this cliff with all my ferocious warriors." "Warriors? Torgir, I did not know there were any warriors in this part of my kingdom. And how many men do you command, sir?" The old man began to chant. 12 ships have I with oaken keels in every boat, 12 in a crew. Each seal is cut in 12, and then each seal is cut in 12 again, all to make our daily stew. And each strip is cut to serve 10 men. How many are my followers then? King Olaf laughed and clapped his hands. "Oh, a mirth riddle. Surely I will solve it. Torgir, hand me a stylus, yeah, and a wax tablet. That's 12 boats, each with a crew of 12. That's 144. Meanwhile, Torgir noticed that the ship was slowly getting closer and closer to the cliff. He could see the gannet birds looming larger. He saw the old man now with yellow, jaundiced, glinting eyes and crenellated, crusty teeth. Your Majesty, don't interrupt. I almost have it. Let's see. And if each one kills 12, that's that. And as they were sailing, they got closer and closer to the cliff. Your Majesty, don't, by Woden and St. Olga, I have it. 58,700. No. Meanwhile, they looked, and just as a whirlpool sucks in a ship into its swirling mouth, so the incantation, the chanting of the man on the cliff began sucking in the ship closer and closer to the rugged, crashing cliff. Your Majesty, don't interrupt. I'm multiplying. Now, if each one kills 10, Your Majesty, he looked, and sure enough, the boat was getting closer and closer. Your Majesty, quiet. I just about have it. With that, Torgir decided he would pull out the oar from the rowlock, set it on the rail of the ship, but it was too short for the job of pushing back the boat. Throwing that down, he tore down the sail, grabbed the mast by the base and heaved it out, and set it on the rail of the ship, the flat end against his chest. As he looked up, he saw the old man now chanting, faster and louder, faster and louder, faster and louder, an evil chant, a wicked chant, an evil, wicked troll chant. Just then the tip of the mast bashed against the cliff and fractured 3 of Torgir's rugged ribs. Your Majesty, I have it. 2,800,000 and blah. But he never finished. Just then, the entire mast smashed against the cliff with lightning, thunderous crash, broke in half, separated the Viking ship and made it go out into safe water, thereby destroying the evil incantations of the old man on the cliff. The incantations designed to kill the king of Iceland. King Olaf lay at the bottom of the boat, having inadvertently tossed his a wax tablet and stylus into the now safe sea. As he stood up, he looked and saw the old man for what he really was. 3 long tendrils grew out of his nose, and he had a face like moldy cheese. By Loki and St. Cyril, look, Torgir, it is a troll. It was a troll trying to kill us. It was a troll trying to bring us to our death. Torgir languidly lay at the bottom of the boat, quietly content knowing he had saved his scholarly king and his crew from crushing destruction. He looked up at the king and smiled and said, "It is often good to have a king who is a scholar, but sometimes a little common sense does not go amiss either."
So, are we getting your brain cells going? You're getting all those riddles and puzzles figured out? Well, we're going to have a few more. I have an example of a couple that might help to get those thoughts and creative things moving a little bit. Consider a beautiful meadow. There are 4 sheep, 2 dogs, and 1 shepherd. Tell me, how many feet are there? Any answers? Well, there are 2. Because the sheep have hooves, the dogs have paws, and only the shepherd has feet. Got your brain going? Okay, here's one more. A lovely farmer, rode into town on his horse. He left on Monday, stayed 3 days, then he came back on Friday. Okay. Say that again. He went into town, rode his horse, left on Monday, stayed 3 days, and came back on Friday. What? Who can tell me how this could be? No. The name of his horse was Friday. Now my story is a Somali Ethiopian story about a lovely gentleman named Abanawis. Long ago, there was this gentleman, his name was Abanawis, and he was known for being very clever. Well, the emperor kind of liked him for his cleverness, but sometimes it made the emperor mad and angry. But even at that, the emperor decided to make Abanawis a guard of the palace. And trouble was frequent from that point on. For no matter what the emperor told Abanawis to do, Abanawis found a way out of getting out of doing it. For instance, Abanawis wanted to go dancing. He loved to dance, but the emperor had told him, "You guard the palace gates." So Abanawis just walked over, unhitched the gate, and took it dancing with him. Well, this made the emperor pretty angry. And he looked at Abanawis and he said, "I do not want to see your face again." Oops. This caused additional problems because now when the emperor would go along in his royal robes and marching around the palace, and people would bow to him respectfully, but Abanawis would turn around and bow with his backside to the emperor. The emperor was furious. That was the final straw. "You must leave the country immediately. I don't care where you go. But if you ever set foot on Ethiopian soil again, I'll have your life." Well, the people of the palace are pretty sad to see Abanawis go because they had really kind of enjoyed his cleverness. But they didn't have long to wait. For a few days later, they looked very surprised. They found there was Abanawis walking around the palace, happy-go-lucky, not a care in the world. until the emperor came. And he saw him, blew his top, yelled at the guards, hang him at once. But Barnabas said, wait. And once Barnabas had spoken, there was nothing the emperor could do but let him walk around and stay and go wherever he wanted to go. How could this be? Remember, he said, if you ever set foot on Ethiopian soil again, I'll have your life. What happened? Well, here's the riddle, at least the answer to the riddle. Barnabas, when he left the country, went to Egypt, and he filled his shoes full of Egyptian soil. So whenever he walked around on Egyptian soil, even in Ethiopia.
You have an opportunity to use your mind in many different ways, in many different circumstances. This story is about one of those times of many years ago. Once, long ago, there was a traveling preacher who found that he needed to stop for the night. He chose an inn out in the country. And as he was getting checked in into his room, he was settling in and falling asleep, other people began to come to the inn to drink and gamble. But before long, there was some money had gone missing. And there's all this ruckus, all this noise going on as people are shouting at each other. You're the one that took it. We know because you're the one who is stranger in this town. I didn't take the money. How dare you accuse me? We need to call the sheriff. You're a low-down sidewinder. All this kept going on. And of course, it woke the preacher up, and he got up out of his bed and he thought, what is going on? So he went downstairs to investigate. Once he got there, he said, now listen, if you all settle down, give me a chance here, and I will help to solve the whole thing. I need a rooster, and I need that big black kettle there by the fireplace. So they brought those things to him. He picked up the big kettle and he put it over the rooster. And then he went over and he covered up the fireplace so that it would dim the light. And he blew out all the candles and all the lamps. Now that it was dark, he said, a covered rooster will always catch a thief. I want all of you to come up and touch the kettle. And once you touch the kettle, you know, when the thief comes up, as soon as he puts a finger on it, the rooster will crow. And then I'll jump out and I'll grab him right away. So that's what people did. They started shuffling up to touch the kettle. But the rooster never crowed. Oh, I'm sorry. It must be a sickly rooster. So he went up to the fireplace and he stirred up that fire to get it going. And they lit all the candles and all the lamps. And when all is light in the room and everyone could see, the preacher said, I know who the thief is. Now, how do you think he knew who the thief was? Well, you might be wondering that. The thief, who was so worried about being caught, he never touched the kettle, and his hands were the only ones that didn't have any soot on them. And now I'm going to share with you a very short story, a little bit of a riddle story. I gave my love a cherry that had no stone. I gave my love a chicken that had no bone. I gave my love a baby with no crying. I told my love a story that had no end. How can there be a cherry that has no stone? How can there be a chicken without a bone? How can there be a baby with no crying? How can you tell a story that has no end? A cherry when it's blooming, it has no stone. A chicken when it's pippin', it has no bone. A baby when it's sleeping, there's no crying. And when I say I love you, it has no end.
This is a story from what is now the Czech Republic. Before that, it was Czechoslovakia. And before that, it was Bohemia. And it's about how using one's cleverness can help you make your way in the world. Once, a long time ago, there was a rich farmer and a poor shepherd. Now, the poor shepherd did work at the rich farmer's farm, and in return, he was to be paid a heifer, a young cow. But when all the work was done, the rich farmer refused to pay. So the poor shepherd had no recourse but to go to the Burgermeister. The Burgermeister is a combination of mayor and judge, local lord. He is the law in that part of the country. So the two of them, the rich farmer and the poor shepherd, went before the Burgermeister. But the Burgermeister was a very young man and not actually very interested in court cases. In fact, the Burgermeister prided himself on his wisdom. He thought he was a second Solomon. So rather than listening to the court case, he said, "Answer me this riddle, and whoever answers it best, to him I will award the heifer." What is the fastest thing in the world? What is the sweetest thing in the world? And let's see, what is the richest thing in the world? Answer these questions and I will give you the heifer. Well, the rich farmer went home in a fury. He complained to his wife, "Wife, I do not understand this new young Burgermaster. Why, the old Burgermaster, I'd have just given him a bribe and he'd have awarded me the heifer. But this new one, he sent me a riddle to answer." "Well, tell me the riddle," said his wife. And when the rich farmer did, his wife said, "Oh, don't worry. I have some answers for you. Surely you will get the heifer." Meanwhile, the poor shepherd, he went home crestfallen. And when he got home, he said to his daughter, Manka, "Oh, Manka, I don't know what to do. The Burgermaster didn't even listen to the court case. He just sent me this riddle." "Well, Father, tell me the riddle," said Manka. And when he did, she said, "Well, Father, I think I have some answers that may serve." The next day, the two of them, the rich farmer and the poor shepherd, went back to the Burgermaster, the rich farmer strutting along with his head high, and the poor shepherd just shuffling along after him. They got to the Burgermaster, and the Burgermaster asked the rich farmer, "What are your answers?" And the rich farmer said quite confidently, "The swiftest thing in the world, that is my gray mare, because nothing ever passes us on the road. And the sweetest thing in the world, why, that would be honey from my bees. Here, Burgermaster, why don't you have a jar?" And as for the richest thing in the world, well, my wife and I have been putting gold ducats away in a chest for many long years, and we have quite a chest full of golden ducats, and that surely must be the richest thing in the world. And then the Burgermaster turned to the shepherd and said, "Well, shepherd, what is your answer?" And the shepherd crept up and wrung his hat between his hands, and he said, Oh, Burgermaster, the swiftest thing in the world, that must be thought, because thought can go all the way around the world in just a blink. And the sweetest thing in the world, it has to be sleep, because what could be sweeter to a man who is tired or unhappy? And the richest thing in the world, well, that's the world itself, because all riches come from it. And then the Burgermaster said, "Ah, shepherd, I like your answer. You shall have the heifer. But tell me, where did you get those answers? Surely you didn't come up with them." And the shepherd admitted that it was his daughter, Manka, who had given him the answers. "Well, if your daughter is that clever," and he clapped for his servants, "bring me a basket of eggs." And when his servants had brought him a basket of eggs, he gave the eggs to the shepherd and said, Have your daughter take these eggs, hatch them in the chickens, and bring me the chickens tomorrow. Then we'll see how clever she is. Well, the shepherd, in some confusion, went back to his daughter, knowing that you cannot hatch out eggs in one day and turn them into chickens. But when Manka heard what the shepherd had to say, she laughed. And she went and she got a handful of grain and she gave it to her father and said, "Father, bring that grain back to the burgomaster. Have him sow it, raise it, reap it, and tell him that I will bring the chickens to be fed from the grain he has raised from that handful tomorrow." Well, the shepherd went back to the burgomaster and repeated what Manka has said. And rather than being angry, the burgomaster started to laugh. He said, "She has answered one impossibility with another. I like your daughter. If she is as pretty as she is clever, I will marry her. But I have one last riddle for her. She must come to me, let's see, neither naked nor clothed, neither walking nor riding, and neither by day nor by night. And if she can manage that, then I shall marry her." Well, the shepherd went back and told Manka what the burgomaster has said. And then the next day, very early in the morning, so early, in fact, it was still night, Manka got out of bed, and rather than getting dressed, she took a fishnet and she wrapped it around and around herself. And then she went out to their little stable yard and she got a goat and she put one leg over the goat and hopped on her other foot. And in this peculiar fashion, she made her way to the burgomaster's mansion and arrived there just as the sun was barely starting to peek over the horizon. "Oh, burgomaster, here I am as you requested." The burgomaster opened his window and looked out. Well, there was Manka. Was she naked? No, she was wearing a fishnet. But was she clothed? Well, no, a fishnet is not clothing. Was she walking? No, she had one leg over a goat. But was she riding? No, she was hopping on the other foot. And as for day or night, she had arrived just at dawn when it was neither and both. Well then, the burgomaster was as good as his word and he married her right away. But he did say to her, "Manka, you must never use your cleverness against me. If you ever use your cleverness against me, I will send you right back home to your father." Well, the two of them lived together very happily for several years. And Manka took great care to stay away from the burgomaster's business and not to go anywhere near his court when it was in session. But one day, she saw a man coming out of the court and tears were running down his face. He was despondent. "Whatever is the matter?" asked Manka. Oh, Manka, I rode my very pregnant horse to the market the other day. And while I was at the market, my horse gave birth to a foal, and the foal ran under another man's cart. And your husband, well, the other man said that the foal belonged to him because it was under his cart, and your husband agreed with him. And now my foal belongs to this other man, and I don't know what to do. Now, Manka was the daughter of a poor shepherd, and she knew just how important even one foal could be to a man. And so she said to him, "I have an answer for you that I think will serve, but you must not, under any circumstances, tell anybody that I told you to do this." The next day, the burgomaster went riding around the town, as was his habit, and there he saw a man standing in the middle of a dry, dusty road with a fishing net, throwing the net and pulling it in, throwing the net and pulling it in, raising great clouds of dust. "Whatever are you doing, man? Surely you know you cannot catch fish in a dry, dusty road." "Oh, burgomaster," said the man, "I can catch as many fish in a dry, dusty road as a cart can give birth to a foal." And then the burgomaster recognized him from the court case the day before and realized his error. and awarded the man his own foal back on the spot. But tell me, where did you get the idea to catch my attention like this? Well, the man didn't want to say, but eventually he admitted that the burgomaster's wife, Manka, had told him what to do. And then the burgomaster went into a fury. He rode home in a rage. Manka, Manka, I told you, you must never, ever use your wits against me. I'm sending you home to your father. Very well, husband, said Manka. But in memory of the happy years we spent together, perhaps we can have one last meal. And could I maybe just take one thing from our mansion, just one thing that I love the best to remind me of the happy years we spent together? Now, the burgomaster was already feeling a little ashamed of himself at his outburst. So he said, yes, yes, of course. One last meal and you may have whatever your favorite thing is from the mansion, but that's it. Then you must go home to your father. So Manka made the burgomaster his favorite foods, all of his favorite foods, into a fine feast, and put many bottles of strong wine with it. And the burgomaster ate and drank and ate and drank and drank and drank and drank and passed out on the table. And the next morning, the burgomaster had a terrible pounding headache. He couldn't get comfortable. His goose feather bed was hard and lumpy and poked at him almost like it was stuffed with straw. He finally managed to crack open one eye and he saw he was in a shepherd's hut. And Manka was standing right over there looking at him. Manka, what in the world is going on? Why am I in a shepherd's hut? Oh, husband, said Manka, you said I could take the one thing that I love the best from our mansion, and that would be you. So I brought you back home to my father's house with me. And then, despite his hangover, the burgomaster started to laugh. Manka, you have outwitted me again. You're right. I was wrong. I was foolish. Come back to our mansion with me. And from that day forward, it was Manka, not the burgomaster, who sat in judgment from all of the court cases. Because, as the burgomaster said, there is nobody, not man nor woman, as clever as my wife Manka. And that story is called Clever Manka.
The basket weaver. Long time ago in Greece, there was a king who liked to go in disguise through his kingdom. That way he could observe, listen, and ask questions without anybody being the wiser. One day as he's going through the town, he comes across a basket weaver. He asks him, how much money do you make? 1 coin a day was the answer. With that, I pay off old debt. I invest in the future, and I feed a family. Well, the king is puzzled on this. How can this man do this on 1 coin a day? He finally asks the basket weaver, what's the answer to this riddle? Well, the basket weaver replied, I pay back old debt to my parents. I'm taking care of them as they took care of me. I'm investing in the future by taking care of my children now so that they will take care of me in my future. And I feed 8 mouths if you talk about me, my wife, my children, and my parents. That's how I do it. Well, the king is thrilled with this riddle. He can't wait to get back to the castle, to his advisors, and challenge them with the same riddle. He reveals who he is to the basket weaver, but makes him promise, you cannot say who I am or the answer to this riddle until you see my face. Do you understand? Well, yes, I do. He said, because if you don't understand, I'm going to have you beheaded. Well, naturally, he agrees to these terms. Back to the castle the king goes. He presents the riddle to his advisors and wants them to solve it. Well, they go off to solve it, and they can't, one at a time, they can't do it. They decide, let's put our heads together. Maybe we can figure out what this means. All the advisors did agree that the king was not smart enough to come up with this on his own, and they hoped to embarrass him with the truth. The advisors knew that the king had been out in disguise several days earlier, so they in turn went into the village, went to people that they saw. Have you seen a man fitting this description? They finally came across the basket weaver, and he said, yes, I remember that man. Okay, they said, did he ask you about 1 coin a day? Did he ask you about paying off that old debt and investing in the future? Yes, that was me. He talked to me. Okay, said the advisors, you tell us the answer to this riddle. No, he said, I can't. I'm under a promise to the king. I promised I would not tell. Well, the advisors are in a tight spot because they're all seeking a higher position with the king by solving this riddle. They said, we'll offer you money. No, I'm not taking money. He's going to be a man of his word. Well, time, and so these negotiations go on. Finally, they offer him money again and again, the amount going up. Finally, he can no longer refuse. He tells the story, how he could tell the king how he figured this out, the riddle, without breaking his promise. The advisors are thrilled. They go back to the castle. They tell the king exactly what happened, and he is furious. He gets his guards out there. They haul the basket weaver back to the castle. He said, you broke your promise. You said you wouldn't tell. Majesty, I did not break my promise. I did not break my word. He said, yes, you did, and now you're making it even worse by lying to me. Majesty, here's how I was able to tell the story and not break my promise. He told the story to the king. The king was so impressed that this man was this smart, he fired his advisors and brought the basket weaver on board as his chief advisor. Now, what did the basket weaver do that he didn't break the promise to the king? Anybody? All right, we'll try this. One more clue. Somebody call it.
Heads.
Heads. Heads it is. That's the clue. Heads it is. Anybody? The truth of the matter is, the promise was he could not tell the story, answer the riddle, until he saw the king's face. All the coins that all the advisors gave him bore the king's face on the coin. He did not break his word.
I'm going to tell you about a poor farmer and a poor god. This is a folktale from Japan. Shintoism is one of the religions that is observed in Japan. And in Shintoism, they have many gods. There are lucky gods, like the Daikukuten, who are gods of wealth and agriculture. And there are poor gods, like the Bimbogami. They're very unlucky. If you had a Bimbogami, you would probably never get rich. So let's hear about the farmer and his family and what they thought would happen when they got a Bimbogami. Many years ago in the mountains of Japan lived a poor farmer. Now this farmer, it seemed to him that the harder he worked, the poorer they got. Well, this wasn't true because he didn't work very hard. He also thought that it seemed like the poorer they got, the more children they had. Well, this wasn't true either because they had 4 children, but they yelled and screamed and argued and just made such a fuss. It seemed like there were more of them than there were. We are so poor,
the farmer whined to his wife. We just have such bad luck. We must have a bimbogami, a poor god. Well, the farmer was right. They had a poor god living in their house. This poor god, though, was very kind. He liked the farmer and his wife. He liked to sit up in the attic room, even though it was dusty and cobwebby, and watch the children play. So soon after this conversation that the farmer had with his wife, she responded, "Husband, I think you're right. I think we have a poor god. Let's get out of here. We can leave in the middle of the night. The poor god will be sound asleep. He won't know we left. We'll finally be rid of him and his bad luck." "That's a great idea," the farmer said. "Let's go tonight. We can go right before sunrise. The bimbogami will still be asleep." So the family packed up all of their belongings. That night, the farmer lay in bed and thought about what their life would be like in the new village. "Maybe I will become a shokan," he said, "and I'll be the overseer of a grand estate. Or maybe I will be a samurai, a brave soldier who protects the lands and the family of a nobleman. Surely my family will be very prosperous." Well, he was too excited to sleep, so he went outside to get some air. And in the moonlight, he saw a stranger. And as he got closer, he saw the stranger was weaving sandals. "Who are you?" the farmer demanded. "What are you doing here?" "I'm the poor god who lives in your house," said the poor god. I heard you say that you're going to be going on a journey, so I thought I'd make you some sandals." The farmer was so mad he stomped his feet, and the racket woke up his wife. "Wife, look, here's our bimbogami, our poor god. He knows we are leaving and he plans to join us. We'll never be rid of him." "Come back to bed," his wife said. "There's nothing to be done." But the farmer was too angry to sleep. The next day, when the farmer and his family got up, they saw that the poor god was still outside making sandals. Their plan to leave had been foiled. Over the next several days, the poor god continued to weave sandals. And the farmer and his wife continued to sulk. And the children continued to fight and yell and scream. Well, one day when the farmer was in the rice paddies looking for some straw, he saw some red straw and he thought, "Well, this might look really nice with the yellow straw when I weave them together." And then he thought, what if I dyed some straw blue? Those three colors together, they might make some interesting patterns. Well, they made some beautiful patterns. One day when the bimbogami, the poor god, was outside making his sandals, a neighbor passed by. "Old man, those sandals, they're beautiful." "Thank you," said the poor god. No one had ever talked to him like that before. "Here, have a pair and have this pair for your wife too." The next day, another villager came by. "Old man, my neighbor showed me those sandals you made. They're beautiful and so sturdy too. Could I have a pair?" "Of course," said the bimbogami. He gathered up a big bunch of sandals. "Here, take these for your family too." The farmer's wife had been overhearing these exchanges and said to her husband, "Word is getting around about the sandals. And the bimbogami, the poor god, is giving them away." farmer went out to the poor god and said, you shouldn't just be giving these away. Say that it costs a bag of rice for one pair. That's a good idea, thought the poor god. The next day, 2 people came by, and the farmer or the poor god was able to get a bag of rice in exchange for 2 pairs of sandals. This got the farmer thinking, I bet if I take these to market, I could do pretty well. So next market day, he put a bunch of sandals in a bag, went to market. That afternoon, when he came home, he showed his wife the empty bag and then said, look, I got in exchange for the sandals, 6 chickens, a cook pot, and candy for the children. Well, it became clear to the farmer that this could be a good business for his family. So he went to the poor god and said, could you make more of these sandals? Because I think I could trade a lot of good things for these sandals, a lot of good things for my family. Certainly, said the poor god, but your family is going to have to help me. So it would be very helpful if they would go out to the rice paddy and gather straw. Family went out, gathered straw. They learned how to dye the straw. And then they also learned how to weave. As the more that they made, the more they were able to sell at the market. While they were working very hard, and very absorbed in this, they didn't notice that things were starting to change around them. They now had enough food for every meal. The wife, who had been just burdened by so many worries, was humming and smiling while she worked. The kids weren't fighting very much, but they were laughing and playing, and they even made a game out of gathering the straw. The farmer, who had been so lazy about harvesting food, worked very hard on the sandals. The ones he made were artistic. You'd probably prefer to hang them on the wall rather than put them on your feet. Even the bimbogami saw some changes. He got a little chubby around the middle. And he also had his clothes that were all raggedy and torn. He had them all repaired. And even his attic room he had cleaned up. In a few days, it would be Shogatsu, the Japanese New Year, very important holiday for the Japanese culture. The mother demanded everybody come in and said, family, we are going to clean this house, and then we're going to clean it again. And so they did, and the family made rice wine and rice cakes for the celebration. The night before the New Year, a priest would come out and get a big brass bell and ring it 108 times. And as this started, all the families in the neighborhood would open their doors to welcome in the new year. Well, the tolling of the bell brought bad news for the farmer and his family. I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave you, the poor guy told them. The father gasped, the wife cried, and the kids hung on to the leg of the bimbogami. No, don't leave us, we love you. Why do you have to leave? You will never get truly rich if I stay with you, the poor god explained. Now you're going to have a rich god come. Look, there he is at the door now. And sure enough, there was a rich god at their doorstep. He was tall and jolly, wore a beautiful bejeweled kimono. The rich god pulled on the arm of the poor god. All right, hurry up, he said. Time for you to go. It's my family now, and I'm going to make them truly rich. Well, the while the rich guy pulled one way. The family took the poor guy's other arm, pulled him the other way. They were pushing and pulling and yelling and screaming, and someone threw a pot of water, and there was arguing, and the father had to yell to be heard above that din. Quiet! I have something to say. I always thought I wanted to be really rich, he said. But now I have laughing and music in my house, and I create beauty every day. We are truly rich. And that was the last toll of the bell. The family pulled the poor god in. They pushed the rich god out and slammed the door behind him. Later that day, when they were reminiscing about what had happened over the past year and the changes they had seen, the father observed, we were lucky to have a poor God. If we didn't have a poor God, we never would have become truly rich.
I'm going to tell a short story called A Nightmare in Time by Frederick Brown. I came across the story in junior high, maybe freshman year in high school. And from then on, it formed the frontispiece to my high school notebook. Professor Jones had been working on his time theory for many years. And I have found the key equation, he told his daughter one day. Time is a field. This machine I have made can manipulate, even reverse that field. Pushing a button as he spoke, he said, this should make time run backward. Run time make should this, said he, spoke he as button a pushing. Field that, reverse even, manipulate can made have I machine this. Field is time. Day one daughter his told he, equation key the found have I and. Years many for theory time his on working been had Jones professor.
I have a story that's an Iraqi folktale that features some of our favorite stories of the Cinderella story. Our young lady in this story uses her mind to capture her own love and cherishes it for her future years. The name of this story is The Little Red Fish and the Clog of Gold. There was a fisherman who had a daughter, and his wife had passed away, and he had to raise her all on his own. He had a neighbor who was also a widow, who had a daughter about the same age. Now, the widow would come over to the fisherman's house, and she would help him do the household chores and help him cook dinner and meals that prepared for him and made it a little bit easier for his life. She would also spend time with the fisherman's daughter, combing her hair and speaking to her softly and saying such things as, don't I feel as if I'm a mother to you? And the daughter would listen to her. And then when she would see the loneliness in her father's eyes, she would think, oh, Father, if you are so lonely, why don't you marry that widow next door? Father would think about it. And eventually he did marry that widow next door. Now, when the widow became the stepmother, she saw her new daughter, her new great stepdaughter, and a regular daughter. Now, her new stepdaughter, the fisherman's daughter, was very lovely, was wonderful at needle and thread work. And then her own daughter was very plain and did not do chores well, if not at all, and was very hard to deal with. As she had seen this fisherman's daughter, she started to think very differently of how she was going to treat her. Now, when it came to chores, the fisherman's daughter was left to do most, if not all of them. And when it came in for the evening meals, when it was time to clean up, the stepmother would hand her a dirty, clean, not a clean, but a dirty rag, soiled and not even wet. When it came for the fisherman's daughter to have dinner, she was given scraps and leftovers from others. Now, the fisherman's daughter thought to herself, I was the one that picked up this scorpion with my own hands. I will use my mind to solve this problem. Now, one of the many chores that the fisherman's daughter did was to go down to the river and pick up the trout that her dad caught every single day, brought them home and gave them to her stepmother to cook for dinner. One day there was a basket with 3 trout and a tiny little red fish. She turned to go home, and the little red fish goes, help me, help me, help me. Let me go, let me go. I'm magical. I can help you. I know you need a friend. Well, the fisherman's daughter certainly, if anything, needed a friend. So she threw that red fish back in the water, so small that it was, went home and gave her stepmother the 3 trout, and she was angry. I talked to your father and you were to have 4 trout. Go back to that river and get me another, or I shall curse you for sure. Fisherman's daughter had no choice but to go back to that river, but this time she thought she would call out for that little red fish. Little red fish, help me. You said you could help me. My stepmother wants to put a curse on me. Little red fish says, look in my mouth. I have a gold nugget. Take it to your stepmother. She'll wish for that 4th fish no more. Fisherman's daughter took the nugget back to her stepmother. She spoke of it no more. Now, a few years pass, and the fisherman's daughter grew into a pretty young little girl and became more like a young adult girl. And her stepsister, she got older too. So, but anyway, let's just digress in the sense that there became a decree across the land that the Lord of the Merchant Guild, his only daughter, was to be married. They had a beautiful ceremony where she would use the henna, which is the dark dye that they paint on her. And prior to that is a huge bridal party. All the young women of eligible marriage age were invited with their mothers to come to this party. Well, the stepmother right away thought, this beautiful fisherman's daughter is not going. I'm taking my own daughter. So she made the fisherman's daughter stay home and clean the house from top to bottom, every single nook and cranny, and told her she was sworn to not leave the house that day. The stepmother took her own special daughter, pampered her, perfumed her, bathed her, and set her in their most beautiful dress. The stepmother and stepdaughter of her own daughter left for the beautiful party. The fisherman's daughter was so upset. She, of course, went immediately to the river, called out for that little red fish. Little red fish, help me, help me. You've got to let me go to this. Everyone will be there. I want to go. This is something that's very important. Little red fish dove to the bottom of the river, pulled out a white bundle, handed it to the fisherman's daughter and said, this you may use. Everything you'll need is inside. But remember, you must be home before your stepmother and your stepsister come back from the party. She was so excited. So this fisherman's daughter got herself all dressed, opened up the bundle. There was a beautiful silken gown with golden threads, emerald green with diamond studs along the hem. She put it on, and the finishing touch were these gorgeous golden clogs with shoes with no bags. She slid them on her feet. She was so elegant. She went to the bridal party. When she walked in the door, everyone was silent. They thought she was the most beautiful young lady they had seen at the party. They wondered if she was from a king far away or a lord of a different land. She got the place of honor seat, able to eat the best food and drink, and her stepmother and stepsister did even recognize her. She spent her time there enjoying herself, and then it was time to leave. She got up, bowed to the guest of honor, and said, may Allah bless you on your wedding day. And then she excused herself, left the party, and quickly ran home. But on her way, she tripped and caught one of her clogs, and they tumbled into the stream alongside where she was running, fell into the pond by the palace. She couldn't wait. She had to get home. She quickly took off the other clog and her dress, hid it in the wood pile, and then she went back to her house, donned her dress of cleaning, and got back to work. Her stepmother and stepsister came home, and all was forgotten. The next day, at the palace, there was a young prince riding his noble steed all over the palace grounds, and he stopped by the pond to get his horse a drink. The horse was startled by something floating in the water. He picked it up out of the water, put it up, and it was glistening gold clog. It was beautiful. He had never seen anything like it before. It must be worn by somebody that has to be amazingly beautiful. He knew that the girls had all gotten together the day before for a bridal party. This had to be someone in the very land that they lived. He went to his mother, the queen, and said, "We must find this girl. I think she could be the one. I have searched so long. We need to find her." Mother, the queen, began the search. They searched the whole land. They were looking night and day, not finding her until they finally reached the fishing villages. That's where the stepmother and her daughter and the fisherman's daughter were living. The fisherman's daughter was very excited. She'd heard the news, but the stepmother had her plans. She took the fisherman's daughter, locked her in the shed on the bottom of the hill, rolled a big rock around and said, "If you speak, you will regret you ever lived." Again, the stepmother took her own daughter, dressed her in beauty, and had her ready for the foot fitting of her lifetime. Unbeknownst to her, the rooster had seen what was happening, and he flew to the little red fish, and he told the little red fish what is happening to the fisherman's daughter. So the rooster came back prepared with what to do. When the queen came with her entourage and went to try on the shoe for the stepmother's own daughter, of course it wasn't a fit. And the rooster began to crow. "You just found someone who doesn't fit this shoe, but they are hiding someone from you." So quickly the servants searched the area and of course found our fisherman's daughter, and a fit was not any more perfect than it could have been. At that point, the queen declared, "This young present, this fisherman's daughter, is betrothed to my son, the prince. They will be married on Friday. The royal coach will come and pick her up." And she gave the stepmother a bag full of gold. The stepmother clenched her fist as tight with rage as she's ever had. Twice she's failed to get her daughter married to someone, and twice the fisherman's daughter has been in her way. She took that bag of gold, went to the village, and went to the herbalist and said, "I want two things from you. One, I want something that will make hair fall out in clumps. Arsenic mixed with lime juice. And the second thing I want is a potion that poisons and rots the body from the inside out." She brought those potions home, and the next day was the bridal preparation day. Of course, she had a lot of, "I'm so sorry, can I help you? I didn't mean to hurt you all these times. Can I just help you prepare for your wedding?" And of course, the fisherman's daughter is a forgiving person. And she said, "I'll be happy to give you here some herbal tea," not knowing it was mixed with the rotting from inside out potion, and she drank it. And then she said, "I'll be happy to wash your hair with this special henna that I bought at the market yesterday." So she put the arsenic and lime juice on her hair and then left her to be. Well, then the fisherman's daughter donned on her beautiful gown she'd gotten for the party and her golden clogs. She had a matched pair, and she was ready to get on her royal coach when the rooster appeared. He had two things from the little red fish. The little red fish knew she needed to repair her hair. So he brought her a golden comb to put in her hair. The minute the comb went in her hair, it changed completely into golden blonde hair with ringlets and curls. He knew how to fix the poison that had been on there. And then he brought a golden necklace with a butterfly on it. And a butterfly has its own spirit that heals the body from within. She was saved from whatever that evil stepmother had done to her. This is the first time the fisherman's daughter had ever felt like a real princess in body, mind, and spirit. She rode that royal coach all the way to the palace, climbed those steps, went up to the ballroom, and there was her prince waiting for her. Their eyes met, their smiles were unimaginably wonderful. They fell instantly in love. They had a day of talk and getting together and were married that day. And they had many children, and the little red fish came to live in the pond at the palace, and he counseled all their children, and they lived happily ever after.
When I was a small child, back in the last century, I used to get a magazine called Children's Digest, and it was like a junior version of Reader's Digest. It had stories and poems and crafts and a page full of jokes. And my friend Mitch, who lived in the same town, and he would get a magazine called Highlights. And it was very similar. It had stories and poems and crafts and another page of jokes. So when Highlights would arrive, Mitch would get on the phone, which was attached to the wall in those days, and call me up. And I would get my Children's Digest, and we would spend a good half hour or so reading these jokes back and forth to each other. And the hardest ones were in a section called Brain Teasers. And that reminded me of this story about some other people who liked to tell brain teasers. And it's very similar to a story that you've already heard this evening, but not quite the same. There once was a young king who valued cleverness over all other traits. He was very proud of the fact that he was a very clever man, and he delighted in pulling pranks on his counselors and telling them riddles that they were found just impossible to answer. Well, one day, the king decided it was time for him to marry. And he knew that he could not just marry an ordinary woman. She had to be incredibly clever, just like he was. So he went on a quest around his kingdom to find a clever woman to be his bride. He would ask them a riddle, and none of them were able to solve this riddle. And eventually, he would come into a town and he would see no young woman anywhere. They were all hiding in their parents' homes because they were embarrassed to think that they could not answer the king's riddle, and they wouldn't come out and talk to him. Until he went to a village in the foothills of the mountains. And he got into the village, he went to the well, and at the well, he saw a young woman drawing water. "Oh, how do you do, my lady?" said the king. For besides being clever, he had really good manners. "How do you do, my lord?" said the young woman, who also had very good manners. "I am your king, and I am on a quest to find a bride." "Oh, are you, my lord? And how do you think you will find a bride here in this little village?" "Well, I have been going around and asking young women a question, and I will see how they answer it, and that will help me decide who to be my bride." "Ah," said the young woman. "And what is the question?" If you care for a basil plant very carefully, how many leaves will it produce?" "Oh," said the young woman. "Well, I will tell you, but first you must tell me how many fish there are in the ocean." "Ah," said the king. "Ah." And they both laughed, and then they said together, "As many as there needs to be." "Well done, my lady. I like how you think." "Why, thank you, my lord. I have another riddle for you, and this one really does have an answer. I have no voice, and yet I answer whenever someone speaks. What am I?" "You would be an echo." "That's right," said Carmelita. "Oh, that's right," said the young woman. "And now I have another riddle for you. What is yours, but everyone else uses it?" "Would that be my name?" said the young woman. "Why, yes, it would." "And, oh, my name is Carmelita," said the young woman. "Well, it's very nice to meet you, Carmelita." "Thank you, my lord. Now I need to take this jug of water to my mother, but before I go, I will leave you with another riddle. And if you can answer it, come back here next week and tell me." And she said her riddle. "In marble walls as white as milk, lined with skin as soft as silk, within a fountain crystal clear, a golden apple doth appear. There are no doors to this stronghold, yet thieves break in and steal the gold. What am I?" Well, it was a very long week for the king. He pondered this question. Marble walls is white as milk. He paced up and down the hallways of the castle. And he went through every book in his library. Like with skin, he pestered his counselors so much that whenever they saw him coming, they would turn around and run the other direction. Well, finally, the appointed day arrived, and the king woke up feeling very gloomy indeed. How could this village girl have found a riddle that I cannot answer, he thought. He sat down at the breakfast table, and when the servant put his plate before him, suddenly he had a revelation. He called for his horse. He rode quickly to Carmelita's village. When he got to there, she was waiting for him at the well, and she said, "Well, do you have an answer for me?" And he said, "I do. And I am not ashamed to say that this was quite a puzzler. It took me a long while to get to this, even though the answer was staring up at me from my breakfast plate every day. The answer is an egg." "You are correct, my lord." So now this went on for weeks. They told riddles back and forth to each other. What's a room that no one can enter? A mushroom. I will run, but never walk. I have a mouth, yet never talk. What am I? A river. Finally, the king said, "Would you like to come, you and your mother, would you like to come and visit me in the city?" Carmelita said, yes, they would very much like that. So the next week, Carmelita and her mother started off on their journey, and they went to the city. The king was waiting for them at the gate when they got there. He showed them around all the wonderful places that the city had to offer, and they had a well also. When they got to the well, the king took Carmelita's hand and said, "I have a riddle for you. What has no beginning and no end, and though it seems to be empty in the middle, it really contains the most precious gift that one can give to another." Carmelita thought, oh my goodness. The king finally found an answer she couldn't, or a riddle she couldn't answer. She was so flustered. And then a smile came to her lips and joy shone in her eyes, and she said, "My lord, is it a wedding ring?" He said, yes, and he handed her a beautiful gold band. "Will you do me the honor of allowing me to become your husband?" And Carmelita said, "I have one more riddle for you, and if you can answer this riddle for me, I will be yours forever. What can you only keep when you give it?" "Oh, that would be my word. And I give you my word that I will always keep my promises to you." "Well, then, I want you to allow me to make one last request that I will make when it is my time to die. Will you allow me to do that, my lord?" "Why, yes, of course, anything you want." The scribe was called for. Carmelita wrote out her last request. Paper was folded and sealed and put in a special silver box. Carmelita and the king were married in a lavish ceremony. Everyone was happy and joyful, and everyone who met Carmelita loved her instantly. The king and Carmelita reigned happily, and they learned to temper their cleverness with kindness. And as the years went on, they became well known for being able to settle the most unusual disputes between their subjects. One day, however, the king was very grumpy indeed. He was tired, he hadn't slept well, and he didn't understand how he could have this whole kingdom full of subjects who were not clever at all, who had to come to him for answers to their problems. And to top it off, Carmelita wasn't even the least bit rattled by any of this. She just sat there very serenely, and that made him even more grumpy. Finally, the day had come to an end, and they were ready to retire. And just then the guard burst in the door, holding a baby, and he was followed by 2 women. "What is this?" cried the king. "Oh, my lord," said the guard, "these 2 women both claim to be the mother of this baby, and I don't know how to decide which one is the real mother. Oh, said the king. Well, you, why do you say you're the mother of this baby? Oh, my lord, I have come from a small village. My husband is very ill and he sent me to look for his family here in the city and bring them with me back home so that they can help us. And this woman took my baby and claims it's hers, said the other woman. Can you believe this poor woman? Why, that baby is mine and all my servants will attest to this. She is only trying to steal this baby to garner sympathy while she begs for money in the street. The king didn't know what to do. Then finally he thought, you stand over there and you stand over there and guard, put that baby down in the middle and then it will crawl to whoever the real mother is. So everyone did as they were told. They put the baby down. He looked at one woman, he looked at the other woman, and then he crawled right to the king. And everyone laughed. And this made the king even more angry because now he was not only tired and grumpy, he was embarrassed. Well, I don't know what to do. I think the baby would be best with this rich woman because she can provide him with a good home and all of her servants say that it's her baby. No, wailed the other woman. Just being rich doesn't mean you have a good home. My husband and I have so much love and we love the baby. Love provides the best home for a child. I don't know what to say. Oh, Carmelita said, oh, my lord, I have an idea. Well, since the king can't decide, then guard, take out your sword and slice the baby in two and give half to each woman. No, said the first woman. No. Don't touch a hair on his head. She's the real mother. Give the baby to her. Ah, said Carmelita. No, that's the real mother, because a real mother would rather give up her child than have any harm come to him at all. Fine, said the king. You take the baby and guard, you take her to find her family and get out of my court. And then he turned to Carmelita and he said, you have embarrassed me. I cannot stand this. I sentence you to death. Everyone was stunned. This was so unlike the king. But Carmelita just looked serene and she said, if that is your wish, my lord. However, I want you to remember what you promised me before we were married, that you would honor my last request. You remember? Yes, he remembered. Now he was feeling rather foolish. He'd flown off the handle. Scribe, bring the box. Scribe brought the box over. He opened it up. He took out the paper, broke the seal. He read Carmelita's last request. He put the paper back down on the table, and then he laughed. And he laughed and he laughed, and he called Carmelita to him and embraced her tenderly and said, you have bested me once again, and I must beg your pardon. You are pardoned, but you must pardon me. You are more clever and more courageous than any woman I've ever known. And what was written on the paper, you may ask? So did everyone else in the court wanted to know as well. So Scribe picked it up, he read it out, and he said, it is my last request that when it is my time to die, I wish for my beloved husband to die with me. And that is Carmelita's last request.
This is our last story of the evening. It's a tale that's told all over the world, but this particular version is set in rural America back in the time of carts and horses and wagons. Once there was an old man who had 3 children, Tom, Bill, and Mary. When his wife was still alive, they were a happy family. But after she died and the children grew to adulthood, they drifted apart. Tom, the eldest son, moved out to the barn and made a room for himself there. Bill soon followed suit and he went to sleep in the tack room out in the stable. They seldom spoke, never smiled. No one took meals with anyone else. The farm survived, but it did not thrive. When the old man became ill and he thought that he would soon die, he called all of the children into his room. There's no way that I can divide this farm so that it will support all three of you. So, whichever one proves himself to be the most herself, could be herself, Mary piped in, cleverest, the father continued, will win the farm and the house. There are 3 coins on the table. You know that I like riddles and puzzles and tests. And so the test is, whichever one of you can fill the room the best, fill my room, you shall inherit the whole farm because you will be deemed the cleverest. That would be me, Tom crowed. He grabbed up his coin, jumped into the cart with the horse, and drove into town. Bill and Mary also picked up their coins, but they waited to see what Tom would do. Tom returned with the cart filled to overflowing with straw. Thrifty and clever, that's what I am, Tom said. Father, I will fill your room. And Tom hauled and pushed and pulled and maneuvered all of that straw into the room until there was none left in the cart. And it became obvious that the room was not full more than about shoulder height. Not full. Sorry, son, the old man said. And besides, how am I going to sleep with all this straw? Tom took the hint, and he also took the rest of the day to pull all of that straw out of the room. The next day, Bill took a stroll down to the river, and he came back grinning. All I'm going to have to buy is a new shovel, because I'm going to fill the room and the whole house with water. Water? Yeah. Easy in, open the back door, easy out. Bill, you can't fill the house with water. Why not? Because even when it goes out, some of it will be left in the walls and in the floor and in the ceiling, Tom growled. And the old man said, and in my bed. My bed will be soggy. How am I supposed to sleep? Oh, I hadn't thought of that, Bill murmured. Water's too wet, straw's too heavy. Got it. And he raced into town, and he came back having bought sacks and sacks and sacks and sacks and sacks of feathers. Bill puffed up with pride, and he said, see, feathers are cheaper and lighter than straw. Who's clever now, older brother? And he began to throw the feathers into the room. He took the bellows from the fireplace and puffed them up so that the feathers, for an instant, seemed to fill the room. But then the feathers began to float downwards, and it became obvious that the room was not full. Good try, son, the old man said. You've done. But I'm sneezing. I must be allergic. How am I supposed to sleep with all these feathers? And soon it was Bill who was sneezing as he laboriously took all of those feathers back out of the room. The next day in the morning, Mary called out as she climbed into the cart. I'm off. Come to dinner tonight and you'll see how I intend to fill not only the room, but the whole house more than once. Come to dinner. She clicked to the horse and she was off. When she came back, her brothers strolled over, looked in the cart. There isn't anything there. Oh, yes, there is. It's small, but there is something. Now remember, even if you fill our stomachs, you're not filling the room. You lost. I haven't lost yet. Come in to dinner. So the boys went out and they worked a long, hard day in the fields. The sun was sinking low as they came back to the house. And as they opened the door, oh, I smell bread, fresh bread. Tom almost groaned. We haven't had fresh bread since Mom died. Soup, I smell soup, Bill drooled. Their father tottered out of his room. Even with the door closed, that chicken you're roasting smells delicious. All right, Tom said. You filled the house with smells. So what? You didn't get any of that food with your coin. You got it from here on the farm. You lose. Oh, I spent my coin, Mary said. Now help me serve up the food and you'll see. By the time all the food was brought out, the sun had nearly set. Tom tripped and almost dropped the chicken that he was carrying. Ow! I can't see where I'm going. We're eating too late. Here, let me have the chicken, Mary said. She put it on the table. Come have a seat, Father. Now, let me make it all clear. She took out from her bag a single candle. She lit the flame, it flickered to life, and the whole room was filled with the soft glow of light. Now you can see to eat. Dig in. Everyone devoured the bread, the soup, the chicken. And then Mary stood up and gestured to the food. All of these were some of Mom's favorite recipes, and I would like to sing one of her favorite songs in her memory. We gather together to the Lord's blessing. He chastens and hastens his will to make known the wicked oppressing. Now cease from distressing. Sing praises to his name. He forgets not his own. And the house, in spite of the fact that they were no choir, was filled with song and memories of their mother. There was silence. I miss her so much. So do we all, Dad. Do you remember the time when we all got chicken pox? And Mom pushed the beds together so that she could run from bed to bed to try to keep us from scraping our scabs off? Oh, said Tom, I do. And do you remember the time that we got caught by Mom sneaking out of the house at night? She was so mad. Bill said, yeah, you should have seen her face, Dad. Your mother was the love of my life. You should have seen her that first day. She was pretty as a picture. And so Tom pushed back from the chair and he said, Mary, that was a fine dinner and we'll help you clear. And then I guess that Bill and I will shove off because you've won fair and square. Mary jumped up. Please don't go. I didn't win to split us up. I won so that we would stick together. If we're going to run the farm together, please move back into the house, move back into your old rooms. We're going to need to plan, to talk. Eating meals together would help. And Tom, you are thrifty and good at math. Would you think about maybe taking over the bookkeeping for the farm? Huh, I could do that. I am good at math, and I have a few ideas about how we could save some money. Then Bill, what about me? Bill, you had a crazy idea with filling the house with water, but I think that you could take that same idea and come up with a way to divert some water from the river to irrigate the farm. I bet I could do that. Tom said, you always were the strongest of us. And so they sat up late that night, talking, planning, organizing. The brothers did move back into the house, and the farm began to thrive. Not too surprisingly, the old man lived a good many more months because there were so many interesting, exciting things happening on the farm. And when he did pass away, he had his loving family around him. Each of the children married, and they brought their spouses back home to live at the farm. The children arrived in time, and the house was filled with the laughter and life that children bring. Oh, sure, sometimes the house was also full of shouting and arguments, but those blew away like a summer storm in the joy of the family realizing the farm and the family could thrive.